Hey YouTube, Vermont Prepper. Wanted to talk about something on everybody's mind that has family, friends, or even lives in South Florida. Obviously, Hurricane Dorian. We're monitoring that very closely. I still actually have a house in Miami, Florida, and I was through Hurricane Andrew, so you know these kinds of things give me flashbacks, and I still remember it to this day. Even though it was 1992, I was very young, and I remember my mother was with us, and my brother was there, and what I just wanted to talk about, like what the people that are going to be affected most by Dorian can expect, given my experience from Hurricane Andrew. And again, you know, things have changed quite drastically between now and then, but at the same time some things stay the same, and that's people. People stay the same, they react the same way. You know, there's sort of like the thing that I remember. First, let's go through the hurricane itself. I remember the hurricane hit Hurricane Andrew about 4:30 in the morning, and I have a video here. It's a pretty good video remembering Hurricane Andrew, Miami-Dade's unbreakable spirit. It particularly wasn't a huge hurricane, but at the same time, it was so compact. You know, obviously a Category 5, if anybody remembers it, but Category 5 hurricane that hit, I lived in southwest Dade County, hit about 4:30 in the morning, August 24th, 1992. And I remember it sounding like a freight train. I remember we did a lot of preparation. The first thing when you're preparing for something, you have to wait in lines in Home Depot, and there were people for wood, or I ended up using fence sections, because all of the plywood left or got bought up. So we ended up getting fence sections to board up the house, and that turned out to be a pretty good thing. That helped out quite a bit. I mean, it was kind of a pain to secure fence section, but it was a good thing. It definitely helped. But it started like 4:30 in the morning. I think it lasted till like 6:30 in the morning. So it was about 2 hours. And this was a really small hurricane. So if you contrast that compared to Dorian, Dorian's really a monster. It looks like it's going to cover quite a bit of Florida. Like a lot of parts, I'd say most of Florida is going to be affected in some way or another, where it was not the case for Hurricane Andrew, because it was really compact, and it was a fast-moving hurricane, really fast as compared to Dorian. In fact, Dorian's forecasted to slow down. And it's, I guess, forecast to hit north of West Palm Beach, and then maybe take a jog toward the north. But I have brother in Sarasota. I have aunt and uncle and cousins in Fort Lauderdale, so they're all going to be affected in some way. So what happens during a hurricane? So what happened with me is we had to hide ourselves in a closet, right? In a master bedroom closet. We hid ourselves. And the pressure was so great, or, you know, so low that, you know, there was a little attic access panel on above us in the master bathroom closet, and it was rattling around. You know, it looked like it felt like it was gonna, you know, kind of get sucked up into the roof, into the attic area, but it didn't. But the bathroom area, what I did is, you know, people say, well, duct tape doesn't really help. Well, I think that's BS. I think duct tape really does help. Not so much for the windows breaking, but what it helps is shattering. So I had the bathroom window duct taped, you know, in a spider pattern. And that window was the only window in the house that broke or got shattered, or not shattered. It got broken by something that hit it. And what happened was that the whole window stayed intact. The duct tape kept it intact. So when that happened, that was like in the thick of the hurricane. Shingles were off the house already. You could see it was raining really hard. Water was pouring into the house at the same time. And it's a concrete block construction, the house. Water was pouring in. So we had to run to the other side of the house after the window shattered right in the middle of the hurricane, and stay on the other side of the house where the wind seemed to not be as great, and we rode it out there. Afterwards, when you survey the damage, obviously, you know, I think our house got damaged enough, but the house across the street, the whole second floor was taken off. So what happened in Hurricane Andrew was there were mini tornadoes within the hurricane. So this is a great possibility for Dorian, is to have mini tornadoes within the hurricane. You know, I lived not too far from Miami-Dade Metro Zoo, and they had just put up a bird sanctuary that was supposed to have protected the birds up to 250 miles an hour, and that thing got taken down. So obviously a tornado of some sort hit that bird sanctuary, and it took down the bird sanctuary. So that's why you have a bunch of parrots, and also the aviary where there were snakes. So that's why you have a bunch of parrots and snakes roaming around South Florida, and they're poisonous snakes as well. But there's parrots, you see, you know, parrots in the trees in South Florida till this day. They, you know, took hold and they reproduced. So there was many tornadoes, and the second floor of the house across the street was demolished. And luckily those people weren't in there. They actually left the house in the thick of the hurricane and went across the street to their kid's house, and they actually made it. I couldn't believe it. So what happens after the hurricane, obviously you're trying to assess the damage. You have to deal with insurance companies, and it was such a big scam. The insurance companies were scamming everybody. They didn't want to pay. The contractors were scamming everybody. They were taking people's insurance money, and then they were just leaving. So you're getting screwed by all sides. And then you had the Miami-Dade inspectors. So they have to go through and inspect the house to make sure it's built to code. And they have a God complex. I'm sorry. I had really bad experience with them. I wasn't able to close a permit in Miami, Florida for probably 15 to 20 years. It was an electrical permit. So I couldn't, if I wanted to sell a house, I couldn't even do it. Not that I wanted to. I still own the house to this day. But to get a permit in Miami-Dade, I don't know whether they wanted to pay off or whatever it was, but I had to actually hire a a company that deals just with permits. That's how corrupt this city is regarding permits, and the contractors are just trying to screw you from all ends. They're not building to code. They're overcharging things, and the insurance companies didn't want to pay. So I was battling with everybody. And luckily, the best thing I think anybody in this situation could do is hire a private adjuster, because the insurance adjusters are going to try and get away with paying you as least amount of money as possible. My suggestion, please hire a private adjuster. I can't tell you how much that saved me. I mean, I got a lot more money for it. And so Miami was a disaster. I mean, there's things that probably have changed since then, and how to deal with hurricanes. I dealt with another one in 2006. And again, not so much the contractors this time, but the insurance companies, again, didn't want to pay their fair share. So I hired a private adjuster, and I got my fair share. So I had to rebuild the house then. I think it was Hurricane Wilma. But let's get back to Andrew. So some of the aftermath, all of the shingles and pieces of wood were off of my house, and it rained. I remember the rain being like torrential downpours after the hurricane, like for days, and like the entire house got flooded with rain. The house itself, there was no flood, no water rising, and no water from the ground from the hurricane got into the house. It was the water from the rain that leaked down into the house because it was such a torrential downpour for days after. And what I did is, you know, I got a bunch of tarps and was able to secure some of the roof so that the rain didn't get through it. But in effect, I was out of my house for 6 months. Actually had to move to North Miami Beach, where I had to fight with the insurance company to get me a house to live in temporarily while my other house got fixed. So again, another battle. Right down the street from me, actually around the corner, they had just put in these large telephone poles. They're concrete. And again, they were supposed to withstand God knows how many 100-mile-an-hour winds. They touted that. They just put them in. So really the ground didn't settle around them. It was right after that Hurricane Andrew hit. And all of these telephone poles were down. So luckily, I had at the time a 1974 Blazer, totally rusted out, rust bucket, but I had like 35-inch tires. So I was able to drive and get just about anywhere that I wanted to go, which I'll always have a fond place in my heart for that particular Blazer. And for those of you who follow the channel, you'll know that I have a military version of a Blazer that I like very much, and also a military version of the pickup, so 6.2 diesels. But that first Blazer was a 1974. It had a 350 in it, and it just got me through everything. So I'll always remember that. But the people, here's both good and bad. Okay, so let's start out with the bad. I remember people gouging, and it's now illegal in Florida to gouge, price gouge, even though it still occurs. And I'll tell you a recent story. People were gouging others and taking advantage, selling ice blocks for God knows how much. I think it was like, they were selling like ice blocks for like $30 or $40, whatever. And people were paying it. They're selling water for like $10 a bottle, I remember. Generators, forget it, thousands. I mean, you couldn't get a generator in that state for a while. I mean, remember, you didn't have the internet like you have it now, or actually at all. You didn't have the internet, or you did. I think you did. I even forget back then, 1992. But if you did, it wasn't something where you can just order off of Amazon and just get a generator, right? You had to, and then you see the telephone poles there. That's the exact poles that I'm talking about. They had to redo them. But the generators were selling for thousands of dollars. People, what they would do, they'd truck them in from like South Carolina, and then they'd be out on the side of the road, and they charge people thousands of dollars for it. So all of that supposedly has been cracked down on. Gas stations, forget it. You couldn't get gas. And that, I think, changed because none of the gas stations had backup generators, so they couldn't pump gas. I mean, there's still going to be gas stations that run out of gas, but I think with Dorian, you'll at least have the ability, if they're able to get gas, to pump it. So when the people who lose power, you know, the gas stations, I think they're mandated to have, at least in Miami-Dade, I'm not sure of the northern counties, but Miami-Dade, you're able to have a generator. You have to have a generator to back up your gas station. But people, so that's sort of the bad, right? The good, is, and I will say, you know, everybody in the prepper community, or a lot of people in the prepper community, have questions about the government and they don't trust the government, whatever. I'm not that kind of person. It's not that I trust the government fully. I say trust but verify. But in this case, you know, FEMA, the National Guard came out and they set up tents and they were feeding people. I mean, it was a really good thing. You just go up, whoever lived in the area, and you go up to their tent and they were handing out food, and it was very orderly. You see people right after in the aftermath of hurricane. Very nice. Like all of the lights, you know, the traffic lights didn't work. People would wait for each other. They'd wave them through. And if you ever lived in Miami, Florida, it's #1 road rage in the United States. So people get pissed off at each other for, you know, for crazy driving, going fast. Yellow light in Miami means go faster if you can to avoid the red. Red means go if you can. Green means speed through as fast as possible. So to have that kind of camaraderie right after the hurricane was a nice little change, because I think people were shell-shocked. It was something that they haven't gone through before. And, you know, people had a genuine kindness toward each other. As time goes on, just like anything else, when the basic necessities are not available, people will start to get nastier and nastier. And this was the case in Miami-Dade. After a while, again, my house was 6 months without power. And this is in Southwest Florida. So you had people that didn't have the insurance that would pay for the house that I had to move to in North Miami. So there were people that were toughing it out in their own house, because not only were they, you know, lacking the insurance, but also they're worried about looters. You had a lot of looting going on. And, you know, not really, you know, violent crimes, but more looting going on, where people would take advantage of others and go into the houses that were vacant. In the aftermath, there was a trailer park down the road from me, right next to a Publix supermarket, and the trailer park was devastated. It looked like a pile of rubble. Miami-Dade since has banned trailer parks from being built in the county there, so they can't have trailer parks there anymore. As you see on the thing there, Home Depot. I remember going to Home Depot, and they actually had to cordon off lines so that people will get the fence or wood or whatever, do so in an orderly fashion. And I remember I happen to have a generator, so I didn't need one, but a shipment of generators came in while people were in line waiting for wood, and you saw just people just scramble right to the pallet where the generators were, and they're, you know, arguing over each other, who was first there, who was not. And then, you know, the bunch of chaos ensued, and you know, little skirmishes, scuffles, no real fights in my experience there, but you know, a bunch of skirmishes and scuffles. And they finally got it under control, and the generators sold out within like 2 minutes. I mean, they were just people would just take them. They didn't even ask how much they were. And, you know, Home Depot wasn't in the gouging, so they're reasonably priced. So the aftermath is probably worse, or just as bad, if not worse, than the hurricane. It's dealing with the insurance, dealing with the contractors, dealing with permits. It's absolutely awful. I say that's the worst part of it for me. The hurricane itself was pretty bad, right? You're scared, you know, you don't know if the house is going to stay together. My house stayed together, and I think there were 65 people killed. in Hurricane Andrew, and it's surprising that there weren't more. But when you have something like Dorian, if you take a look at this hurricane's huge. If you just even eyeball it, it's about the half the size of Florida right now. And you see these warm waters right here. That's where it's really going to intensify and grow. And these bands are going to, consolidate, and it'll draw more bands. And it's going to be big. It'll probably cover nearly all of Florida, with the center of it, probably 50 miles out, you'll probably be hurting pretty badly. And then further out, varying degrees. But again, it says, it's going to slow down, which means more rain, which the rain is probably just as bad as the hurricane as well, because once the shingles go on your house, the rain is going to come down and it's going to destroy everything. I had to get my entire house gutted and rebuilt. We had to dry it out, with big blowers, just so that the mold didn't take. And I was lucky enough to have friends that had blowers where I worked. They had blowers, and we were able to blow out the house. But in any event, that's my experience with that. I mean, Hurricane Dorian has a potential of being just as bad, if not worse. Category 4 or 5, to me, doesn't make a difference. A few miles an hour difference. It's what happens during and after with the rain and the wind. The wind is obviously going to dissipate as it gets toward the center of Florida, but at the same time, the people on the West Coast are probably going to get their fair share of wind and rain. So it's something that we're all keeping an eye on here. And, my heart goes out to everybody there that has to deal with this, because it does give me flashbacks. And I'm fully prepared to go down there and help my family if I need to. I think the South Florida people will be okay if I had to guess. But again, Hurricane Andrew, here's another thing. Hurricane Andrew was thought to hit just north of Lauderdale, and at the last minute, it jogged south right over Miami-Dade. And I remember I used to have a picture of right before it hit, and you see these infrared bands right here. There was a purple band, and that was where the major part of wind was. It was going right over my street right before it hit land. So it was, we took the worst of it, survived it, and hopefully, you see a lot of last minute preparations and things. My brother, who's down there, I kept coaxing him into getting a generator. He finally got it. He got a nice sized generator. Just on Friday it got delivered. So he ordered it a week before. And then he was able to get 4 5-gallon gas cans at Harbor Freight. They were actually the last 4 that were available. And remember, I was telling you about a story about gouging. Kind of disappointed in Tractor Supply. Tractor Supply was charging $40 for a 5-gallon gas can. And over here, I have Tractor Supply 10 miles from me. They just had them on sale for like $15 each. So where do you get the difference from? I mean, there's not that much of a cost of living difference between Vermont and Florida. The gas is nearly the same. Florida actually maybe even have lower cost of living because they don't have a state income tax. But at the same time, it's one of those things where it's disappointing. In any event, I hope you all have been able to learn something about, some of the things you need to expect during a hurricane, and particularly the aftermath. I talked more about the aftermath. And, pray for everybody in Florida. Anyways, thanks for watching, and please like, subscribe, or comment. Vermont Prepper out, and as always, keep prepping.